Hello, everyone. This is the third in the series of solo slichos. If you are compelled to say slichos alone, can you even say slichos at all? On the surface of it, it's just words. Why not? So if we take out the Aramaic words and we take out the Yud Gimel Midot, all the rest, it's actually not at all clear. The Ohr-Zarua, Rav Yitzchak Rabbi Moshe from Vienna, 1180 to 1250, he was a Talmud of the Ravya, and many of the Balei Tosfot. He was the Rav of the Maharami Rutenberg, who became the Rav of the Rosh, the Mordechai, and the Hagahot Maimoniot. He quotes the Gaonim that we started this series with, say the Rav Ambam Gaon in the name of the Rosh Yeshiva Rav Natan, that said, it's not just forbidden for a solo Slichot Seir to say the 13 attributes of mercy, but to say slichos at all. In the words of the Ohr-Zarua, katuv b'divrei hageonim, de'en yachid omer slichot klal. And what's interesting is that this is quoted not just by the Ohr-Zarua from the Gaonim, but later on, the Hagahot Oshri, who is one of the most important perushim for us Ashkenazim. It was a perush on the Rosh. So, from the Ohr-Zarua, his student is the Maharam, his student is the Rosh. He wrote a perush on the Gemara with Piskei Halacha. On the Piskei Halacha came along the Hagahot Oshri from Rabbi Yisrael from Carmej, and he, during the 14th century in Austria, added in all the Ashkenazi poskim since the Rosh. And he writes, after seeing the Ohr-Zarua, Ein hayachid omer slichot klal. You do not say slichot at all. Both adding in ve'ino omer ve'yavor, and of course you don't say the 13 attributes of mercy. Well, the question is, what does this mean? And there's three ways to understand it. The RAMA in the Shulchan Aruch quotes it verbatim. Ein layachid lomar slichot o ve'yavor. Not just the 13 attributes of mercy like the Shulchan Aruch said, but he adds no slichot at all. And just in case you think we're not reading him correctly, the Mishnah Berurah says that since he said this on the words of the Shulchan Aruch that allowed 13 attributes of mercy, albeit like you read the Torah, Chazar b'shana harama b'shem Ohr-Zarua, da'afilu slichot lechud, kan keinen lomar be'yachid. No slichot at all. Slichot is for the congregation. Second point of view is the Taz. The Taz says he doesn't understand this. After all, they're just words. They're not a davar shebikdusha like Kaddish Kedusha Baruch Hu, the 13 attributes of mercy. They're not in Aramaic, they're in Hebrew. So why can't you say it? And therefore he says that maybe it's because everything is surrounding the 13 attributes of mercy in the Slichos. Again and again and again we say Kel Melech Yoshev Kisei Rachamim, or at the beginning Kel Erech Hapayim, and we mention Breach Shloshesrei, the covenant with the 13 attributes of mercy. And therefore says the Taz, how can you say it and not say it? How can you keep on mentioning, I'm going to say the 13 attributes of mercy, remember the 13 attributes of mercy? And at the end of the day, you don't say the 13 attributes of mercy. And therefore, both the Ohr-Zarua and the Hagahot Oshri were very clear. When they codified this law, they said don't say slichot and v'ya'avor, because one leads to the other. Because you're not saying the 13 attributes of mercy, and we mention them so often, it's inappropriate to say I'm going to mention it, but I'm not going to say it. And therefore he says, ultimately, you could probably say the slichot that don't have the words Shloshesrei 13 in it, but you can't say the slichot that do mention it. So in a word, you could say most of the slichot, but any slicha that has the words Shloshesrei, Schol on the breach Shloshesrei, don't say. From this perspective, not only not 13 attributes of mercy, but the preceding paragraph, Kel Melech Yoshev, does have it in there, don't say it. The third point of view on this interesting assertion of the Ohr-Zarua and the Hagahot Oshri is the Magen Avraham. He says, due respect, look where the RAMA brought this law. He didn't bring this law in the halachos of slichos for, say, the week before Rosh Hashanah or between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. He brought it in the laws of fast days. Simon Taf Kuf Samich Hey. The laws of fast days, indeed he brought it for a very simple reason. Once upon a moon, said the Shulchan Aruch, the minhag was to say slichos, not like we do. after the Chazarat Hashatz, but in the Chazarat Hashatz, in the words Slach Lanu, in that bracha where we say forgive us, we would say all the Slichos, just like we say Slichos in the middle of Chazarat Hashatz at Ne'ilah. Same thing we do on fast days. That, says the Magen Avram, you can't do without a minyan, because you don't say Chazarat Hashatz. But the Slichos that are either after Chazarat Hashatz, or in our case, before davening, that, of course, you could say. In the Sharei Tziyun of the Mishnah Bura, he agrees with this thinking. The Kavanato, Shemamakom shel Lomar Slichos betzibur be'emtza tefila, hayachid betfilato ino yachol la'asot mishum hefsek. Even if you're davening alone and you say Slach Lanu, you cannot say the Slichos. It's only in Chazarat Hashatz. And that's what the Ohr-Zarua meant. So, either he totally outlaws Slichos, or he outlaws Slichos that have any sort of hint to the 13 attributes of mercy, or he only meant Slichos that you say in the middle of Chazarat Hashatz. And indeed, the fourth point of view says this whole thing is wrong. The Bach of Yoel Sirkis comes along and says, what's the problem? It's just words. But we have this Ohr-Zarua. He says, I'll explain it to you. And layachid lomar slichot kanahog im b'ya'avor, shezeh vadai asur. Aval slichot belo b'ya'avor ein isur. Says the Bach, look at the words of the Ohr-Zarua and Hagahot Oshri. They said not to say slichos or b'ya'avor, namely slichos with 13 attributes of mercy, no. But slichos without 13 attributes of mercy, yes. And indeed, the Mishnah Bura sums up and says the Achronim, many, have absolutely didn't understand this RAMA, and therefore we believe that it's okay as long as you don't say the 13 attributes of mercy. From this perspective, I believe that's the common minhag, that if you're not davening with a minyan, you say the slichos, albeit without the 13 attributes of mercy, or in the ways we've already said. Add to that the Taz, don't even say the piyut that talks about the 13 attributes of mercy. However, if we want to mekayim the RAMA, I believe his words are very, very important. And that is, don't say slichos. Slichos is for the congregation. It's not for the individual. Slichos is a congregational experience. We're knocking on God's door unannounced only because we have a tzibur behind us. You can knock on God's door for Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv at a time where you usually don't knock on God's door. And that's exactly the time we say slichos. Namely, we say it at a time which is not davening time, preferably between midnight and daybreak. You can only do that if you have a congregation behind you. And therefore the Rama says we can't do that alone. There's a halacha that since you say slichos at night or before daybreak, there's a machlokas if you make a bracha on the talis, and therefore better to take a borrowed talis where everyone agrees you do not make a bracha, which means you can't even begin slichos without the help of another fellow Jew. The whole slichos experience is of everyone coming together, asking God for forgiveness. As the whole 13 attributes of mercy during slichot is learned out from the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Zayin Amud Bet, that says, Melamed shenitatef HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'shliach tzibur, that God put on a talis like a chazan. In other words, the whole 13 attributes of mercy, even mentioning it, is chazan, congregation, only a congregational experience. But if you don't accept this point of view, you could say slichos, albeit keep out the Yud Gimel Midot, or say it in the permissible way, and keep out the piyuts that talk about the Yud Gimel Midot.
כי טוב השם ואשרי הגבר יפסה בוי כי טוב השם